Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Green Zone podcast with yours truly, Cameron Green here, exclusively on our YouTube channel, wherever you may be getting us here, wherever you found this podcast. Welcome if you're the first time to the Green Zone podcast. If you're new here, or if you're not new, I should say, and welcome back, you Green Zoners. Where you find us on our Twitter page, Green Zone Pod, my personal Twitter, the Man Cam 42. I like to shout out our podcast there as well. And announcing that our baseball page, I mentioned our last episode being launched, has launched. It's Green Zone Baseball. GZ Baseball is the Twitter handle there, I believe, on the YouTube thing. I'll just make sure get a for sure on this side because I would hate to steer everyone the wrong direction here, but I'm pretty sure our Green Zone podcast. But we're live. Like we are having that coming up here on our baseball page. I'm happy to announce it'd be a lot more baseball content. Yes, GZ Baseball is our YouTube page there. And we'll be going over that stuff there. I'm going to have some kind of expose stuff going on there. Baseball is for sure my number one sport that I love talking about the most with all of you. And if all you here, don't want to listen to my baseball stuff, then you can go ahead over to our GZ Baseball plays on Green Zone Baseball. And it's also out of season, so maybe it's a little harder to talk about it at times. But if you're looking for all things baseball, go over to Green Zone Baseball. We get two videos up there, some Sporkle quizzes that happened last week. Those debuted on Tuesday and Wednesday. But today we're back here. Usually we announce this, or I say launch this on Thursday, but we're back here on Friday for our Green Zone podcast. So once again, I'm with you here, Cameron Green. Going to be tackling a lot of NFL issues today, or I should say things that we have on our mind. Um, we'll be looking at the Commanders, Eagles, that game, what's going to take for both of these teams to maybe get past each other. And of course, we'll look at the Bills Chiefs game as well. But we're going to be looking at too some of last week's divisional round. And just kind of like Oscar season, we have the NFL honors announcing their finalists for the awards. So I'm going to go through and announce who I think is going to win these awards. And I guess like I'm picking two who I want to win is also saying who I think is going to win. They're kind of two different things. Kind of like how my picks I do, the spread and the straight up a little bit different. But I think who I want to have the win is also who I kind of think is going to win. And if I get some wrong, get some wrong. It's exactly what we'll be looking at here. But I want to start off here coming off championship weekend is up and upon us here after divisional weekend last week as the Chiefs and Bills defeated their respective teams and the Eagles and Commanders did too well. I want to start off with the Lions because this is probably gonna be the last time we talk about the Lions up until draft day, and we'll be having another draft episode coming up here in the springtime when that happens, and yeah, NFL news, any free agent news that happens too. We'll get that as we go. But man, I think if there's such thing as football gods, all right, somewhere out there there are football gods, the gods of in Lions folklore, Bobby Lane, the ghosts, even though they're still alive, but of Barry Sanders and Billy Sims and some terrible free agent signings like Scott Mitchell and Charles Rogers. I guess Charles Rogers is no longer with us, so he is the ghost of Charles Rogers and Joey Harrington and Matt Millen. Somewhere along those ghosts, I think that the Lions really have doomed themselves for a long time here. And I might be wrong because I think a lot of this Lions squad will be running it back next year and for years to come. And I'm not saying that there, but I think the stars were aligned this year for Detroit to be in a Super Bowl. And when it mattered most, Detroit failed to show up against Washington. Washington deserves to be there. Washington outplayed. And I think too for Washington, they could establish their first great moment as the Commanders. However, if we're sticking here in the Lions discussion right now, I don't know as a Lion fan how you would be able to recover from this one. You've made playoff appearances recently, and last year hurt getting all the way to the NFC title game, but the Niners were a better team. It's just I think what happened last year. But and hosting that game over, potentially Philly. But man, I really don't know what to say. It kind of leaves you speechless because I'm not a Lions fan, but when I grew up in the late 2000s, early 2010s, the Lions, besides for Matthew Stafford and Calvin Johnson, not a lot to talk about, and a lot of losing seasons there in Detroit. And I'm not saying, in Minnesota here it was all sunshine and rainbows either. There were some down years for the Vikings, but you feel like it's kind of like rooting for your younger brother. Once you're eliminated, you're still rooting for your brother to make it there. And to see the Lions fall short is disappointing, I think. And that's, I think the loss that of all of the playoffs this year, the one that probably stings the most is Detroit not making that at least conference championship game. Um, but it leads us to what I want to talk about here this week. I want to start looking at both of these teams and these games in front of us. The Friday before Championship Sunday, and looking at what it's going to take for each of these teams to come away with a victory this weekend. I'm starting with the Eagles Commanders because what's it going to take for the Commanders to move on? It's going to require something they've been doing all postseason, but that's Jaden Daniels to just keep doing what he's doing and continue to create plays and continue to be able to get other guys involved. I mean, you look at it there. Of course, Terry McLaurin leads that receiving group, but Zach Ertz making big time plays. Like, there's so many different players getting involved in that Washington offense that what Washington is doing so well right now by having all those weapons on the field is leaving some defenses having to kind of pick and choose who's going to beat you. With having both Brian Robinson Jr. And Austin Eckler too, you do have viable running backs. I wouldn't say they're like powerhouse guys or someone that's gonna, take off on you and do what Saquon Barkley does to every team he's played this year. But they are a dynamic running backs that can create plays at any given moment. And mix that with a quarterback who's able to create plays on his own and seems to make the right play like he is a 5-year, 10-year veteran and he's 23 years old. The Commanders, all they have to do is get out of their own way and play their style of football. And I think too, riding off beating the Lions is much more convincing win to them than beating LA. Now, if I'm looking at what Philly has to do this week in order to let themselves be in a good spot, I think it's one word: Saquon. Let Saquon loose. That's what I put here on my little game plan for this show. It's letting Saquon do what Saquon does best, and that's running for his life in a good way. Running for 200 yards, running for 100 plus. I would like to see. I would like to see, AJ Brown, Devonta Smith get more involved, and Dallas Goedert's been a lot more involved these playoff weeks than he was closing out the season, and seeing Jalen Hurts playing at his peak. And the thing is for the Eagles too is maybe they felt they were a running back away from going back to the Super Bowl. No disrespect to DeAndre Swift, he was actually pretty decent for them last year, but Saquon's a different beast. This is showing here that you are a running back away from being in the Super Bowl potentially, and having a decent running game that isn't led by your quarterback. I think that what the Eagles have to do is show up, bring that defense, the Jalen Carter defensive line, led by, different players on that defensive side of the ball, like Zach Bond, who's up for the Defensive Player of the Year. You get guys like that. you have a shutdown secondary, and then you have the offense that's so dynamic. And of course, I think this year you could say, although it's Jalen Hurts' offense, it's led by Saquon Barkley this year, and I think that's just something that's happening there. Again, I'm not predicting what I think is going to happen. If I had to lean one way or the other, I think Philly is the better team on paper, but I thought that the Lions would absolutely blow out the Commanders. I mean, I didn't see the Commanders beating the Lions by 2 touchdowns. I didn't see that coming. So I think when we're looking at here, I would rather see Washington get in versus Philly. But I think Philly right now, I think the spread's at what? I think it's 6.5. I want to say off the top of my head, 6 points towards Philly. What might be nice for Philly is if Washington is determined to stop Saquon Barkley, that other players can blossom. A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert, the ones I've been listing here in this whole discussion I'm having. But, you know, we've seen when Saquon is not as effective, it puts a lot more pressure on the other guys in the offense to stay involved. And we've seen A.J. Brown get disconnected before, and that's a little concerning, I'd say, to say the least. But also, I think when you're looking at that, Philly has to find other ways to win in case Saquon doesn't, have a game of his, gets hurt. There's other ways I think Philly needs to adapt how to win that they've done beforehand without having Saquon there, like last year. But I mean, if this Washington team can bring it, man, I would not be opposed to seeing Washington playing for the Super Bowl 2 Sundays from now. And if we look here on the other side, on the Bills Chiefs, what I think needs to happen for each team is I think it's kind of like a double-edged sword because Buffalo's been knocking on that door for we've seen it here in the playoffs for years now, the same way Cincinnati was. Um, Buffalo and Cincinnati seem to be the biggest rivals to sort of, I would say, dethrone the Chiefs here in the AFC. Um, which leads us to this perfect Sunday. It's the one everyone wanted to see. I don't care if everyone wanted to see Lamar and Mahomes go up against it. Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes seems to be a perfect battle in the playoffs. And I think too, like I said, the double-edged sword is I think what Buffalo needs to do is use the past history and fuel up that car and get Josh Allen going and get their weapons going. Get James Cook running downhill. Get Dalton Kincaid. Even getting Dawson Knox mixed in there a bit. Get Shakira in there. Get Amari Cooper involved. Get Keon Coleman. I mean, just having guys all for, 11 guys for one goal on each side of the ball. And it's funny to say, I don't have a lot of notes on what they have to do because we've seen Josh Allen do this, week in and week out. But what concerns me in Buffalo, defensive side of the ball, is what's a bit concerning because I think if Kansas City can go out and put up points early and say Buffalo punts or goes 3-and-out, KC can have themselves a drive that ends in 6 more. What KC has to do is just know that the history is on the line. It's like in the Matthew McConaughey speech in We Are Marshall. You got to lay that hard on the line. The history is on the line here. How do you want to be remembered as a team that went back to back? There's been a lot of teams that have gone back to back. The Broncos in the 97, 98 year. Maybe it's 99. Broncos in the late 90s. Brady's Patriots have gone back to back. Lombardi, Bart Starr, and that Packers squad has gone back to back. I mean, but what you can do here is separate yourself from the pack. And if you're Patrick Mahomes, what? This would be 4 Super Bowls by the time you're 28 years old. which is insane. I mean, or say he's 29 years old, um, three Super Bowls, three Super Bowl MVPs. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous what we've seen out of this kid. But to have four Super Bowls by the time you're 30, I mean, it looks like the Chiefs re-identify themselves every year in different ways, and they just make it work every single time. And I just think again, I don't know who's going to win this game, what the money line is at. The money line right now is Kansas City by 2 points, and that could be anyone, going for that one. I want Buffalo to be in the Super Bowl. I'm saying it here. I'm announcing it on the Green Zone podcast here on this Friday. I want Buffalo to be in a Super Bowl. But I think that Kansas City is more sound than Buffalo. And if Kansas City plays their game, better defense, about the same offense, I want to say. But when Travis Kelsey's doing Travis Kelsey things, that Chiefs offense is dynamic, of course. And when Kareem Hunt and Pacheco are running their way, and maybe you get DeAndre Hopkins involved more. We've seen Xavier Worthy get involved. Good for a rookie to see. But I think Kansas City has the upper edge in this one to me if I'm looking at who I would think belongs in the Super Bowl. I want Buffalo to do more. I want Buffalo to get there. But I don't know if Buffalo has the complete package that Kansas City might have. So we'll see. I mean, I'll be on here next week. We'll talk about what the Super Bowl will look like. It'll be two Sundays from now. Good. Next week, got to crack down on our Pro Bowl analysis. Whatever have we? But we'll see what happens here for this weekend. Shifting over though to the NFL awards. I have listed down on here. See how many categories we have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of them that we have here that we want to vote for here on the Green Zone podcast, who I think should and I want to win. I'm going to start off here with the rookies. Offensive Rookie of the Year nominees are Brock Bowers, Jaden Daniels, Malik Neighbors, Bo Nix, and Brian Thomas Jr. If I had to rank the five, because I think Jaden Daniels hands alone, or he stands alone in this contest, but he is hands down the pick for Rookie of the Year. I think I'm going Daniels, I'm going Bowers, I go Nix, Neighbors, Brian Thomas Jr. I only put Brian Thomas Jr. last because I think having Trevor Lawrence for most of the year when Neighbors was kind of playing with Viking quarterbacks now, Daniel Jones and DeVito and Drew Lock. I mean, the fact that Neighbors still had a really great season for a rookie is impressive considering who's going to be at quarterback there. And, we'll see who's out there next year. Shador. Maybe Shador Sanders out there. But I think Jaden Daniels wins this award clear as day for this one. Defensive Rookie of the Year, we got Cooper DeJean, Braden Fisk, Quinion Mitchell, Chop Robinson, and Jared Verse. I think Jared Verse wins this Defensive Rookie of the Year pick. Remember, I think I had my original one. I think I had the Offensive Rookie of the Year as Caleb Williams. I thought it made sense, of course, making, we just one quarterback off. And Defensive Rookie of the Year, I think I did pick Dallas Turner. We're wrong. We're wrong there. But Jane Daniels and Jared Verse I have for my Offensive and Defensive Rookie of the Year. Coach of the Year, looking here, Dan Campbell, Kevin O'Connell, Sean Payton, Dan Quinn, and Andy Reid. While I like to see Dan Campbell beat Kevin O'Connell twice in the regular season, I don't know if I can pick Dan Campbell for that award because looking at what Detroit was supposed to be, they were supposed to win the division, kind of supposed to be back in the conference championship, if not the Super Bowl. I don't know if I can pick Dan Campbell as coach of the year. For the same reason, I don't think I can pick Andy Reid. I think you have to nominate them because they're the two coaches that led their teams to the best record in their respective conferences. But we expected both Detroit and Kansas City to both be in the spots they were or are at this point in the season. Now, Sean Payton's one that I could look at and say I could see that one happening because taking in not only a rookie quarterback, but taking in all that cap hit you're paying Russell Wilson for the next 2 years or so, and building a team that not only, was competing throughout the regular season that makes the playoffs, insert Jim Mora, playoffs, but what Sean Payton did there, very impressive for what happened this year, but I still don't think I can pick Sean Payton. And that leaves me between Kevin O'Connell and Dan Quinn. I think I go either one this way because Dan Quinn, of course, you're drafting second last year. You run it back with a pretty similar team, and you get Jaden Daniels, and everything seems to magically start working out as a first year head coach there. Um, and Kevin O'Connell, the same thing. It's like you're projected to finish maybe with 5 wins, 6 wins. In my head, I'm going to pick Kevin O'Connell to win this award, not just because I'm a Viking fan, not just because I think that Kevin O'Connell is one of the best head coaches in all of NFL, but what I had the Vikings at, I had them at no more than 6 wins. I think that said if they were 7-10, it would be a successful season, and of course, doubling 14 win season. I don't think you can do that without Kevin O'Connell. I don't think Sam Darnold becomes what he became this year and what Sam Darnold might very well become for years to come without Kevin O'Connell this year and Aaron Jones blossoming and just the offense working in sync here. The fact that you had big wins against Green Bay twice and you beat, Chicago and big wins that we were not expecting the Vikings to have, beating the Texans and beating these teams down the stretch too. Of course, so the Vikes had 4 losses to Detroit, or excuse me, is it 3 losses? 3 losses in the regular season, but one to the Rams there. Like you lost to the two teams twice. 4 losses between the Lions and the Rams. Everyone else wasn't a blimp on your radar, really, for what happened this year. And I think it doesn't happen without Kevin O'Connell, so he's going to be my coach of the year. Assistant coach of the year, we got Joe Brady, Vic Fangio, the defensive coordinator there for the Eagles, Brian Flores, Aaron Glenn, the new New York Jets coach. Congratulations to him, and the new Chicago Bear coach, Ben Johnson. Although all these candidates deserve to be nominated for sure, I think Ben Johnson, what he did in Detroit and making that offense one of the most prolific offenses we've ever seen in league history, has to be awarded there. So I'm going to go Ben Johnson there for the assistant coach of the year. Won't spend too much on that one. Comeback Player of the Year award. We have Joe Burrow, Sam Darnold, J.K. Dobbins, Christian Gonzalez, and Damar Hamlin for the second straight year being nominated for this award. I don't really get why Hamlin's in there again. I think last year was his time to win it, and people were all pissy about him not being in that group. So I get why people want to vote for him this year. J.K. Dobbins is super, super inspirational onto what he's faced in his career and come back from. Was a pretty productive running back this year. My problem picking Sam Darnold is that the AP came out and said these were the things we were looking for in comeback play of the year, and it was not from coming off the bench, coming off being a backup quarterback. But at the same time, it's pretty contradictory to what they picked Geno Smith for. I want Darnold to win because I don't think anyone expected Darnold to come out of nowhere and do these sort of things. But I'm gonna pick Joe Burrow for comeback player of the year. If you're gonna be a guy who's in the MVP case and the offensive player of the year and have one of the best seasons we've ever seen at the quarterback position, like it or not, it is one of the best seasons we've seen at the quarterback position ever. I think you can say ever in this case. I am picking Burrow for comeback player of the year. Offensive and defensive player of the year. The offensive player of the years are Saquon Barkley, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Derrick Henry, and Lamar Jackson. Again, this is the non-quarterback award everyone seems to pick here from. And if you're looking at who's the best non-quarterback in the league right now, it's Saquon Barkley by a mile. Saquon Barkley will take this award by far easily. You don't spend much time on this one. Barkley was the most dynamic player probably in football all year. If the MVP wasn't a quarterback award, I would pick Saquon for that one. So, I mean, Saquon's going to easily win this Offensive Player of the Year. Defensive Player of the Year, Zach Bond of the Eagles, Myles Garrett, Trey Hendrickson, Pat Surtain the second, and T.J. Watt. Now, I like Bond, and I like Hendrickson. And Hendrickson, I know, leading the league in sacks. Doesn't really say a lot, though, because biggest problem for Cincinnati was the defensive side of the ball. So it kind of doesn't make sense if you pick Hendrickson. Zach Bonley and a great defense there. But I don't think I can pick Miles Garrett either. It comes down to Pat Surtain and T.J. Watt. In personally me, I think I am picking T.J. Watt because of how many guys had a game plan around him. But I think Pat Surtain becomes a quick second place in that race. So I will go T.J. Watt for the Defensive Player of the Year. And of course, our MVP of Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Saquon Barkley, Jared Goff, and Lamar Jackson. Gonna break it out in my golf voice. And welcome here another Sunday here at Augusta National. But in this case, I can't vote for Burrow. They didn't do much. I don't think Jared Goff's MVP. It's a great season from him. I think it comes down to Allen, Barkley, and Lamar Jackson. And folks, drum roll please. My MVP for this season. Originally I thought it was gonna be Brock Purdy. I'm picking Lamar Jackson to be the MVP of this league. And not only the fact was he first team All Pro, that has nothing to do with what I'm talking about here. But I think that Lamar Jackson is the most complete player that we've seen in football this year. And I know Josh Allen had to carry the most load for Buffalo. And if we implemented the playoffs into this award, it would be Josh Allen or Saquon Barkley. But I think Lamar Jackson having one of the best seasons we've seen in NFL history from the quarterback position. We really have between Allen, Barkley, and Lamar, three of the best years we've seen from quarterbacks ever. And it's just something that needs to be appreciated. Whoever wins this award, if we could do co-MVPs with Lamar or Josh, or Lamar and Saquon, or Josh and Saquon. I mean, that's very much would be a cool thing to do here, but I don't. We had to pick once here. So I'm picking Lamar Jackson for the MVP. And that is my NFL awards. We'll see how I did here after those come out. Recent news, though, that came out today. Pete Carroll is going to be the new head coach for the Las Vegas Raiders. It's a bad day to be a piece of gum in Las Vegas. Pete Carroll loading up there in Vegas, trying to restart that thing from scratch. Feels a lot like what he did in Seattle when he first started, and that's why he gets the 3-year contract. But hear me out. The AFC West has the best collection of NFL head coaches. I think having Peyton, Reed, Harbaugh, and Carroll. Those are four guys who could be going to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Pro Football Hall of Fame at some point in all of their careers when it's all said and done. And it's by far, I think, the most talented coaching squad there. I'm excited to see what Pete will do because, again, I remember that first year, some of those early years when Pete was there in Seattle. And they brought in Matt Flynn to be the guy, and Russell Wilson came out and became something beyond any of us thought he would be. It's possible that Vegas could be on the come up here in just a short amount of time, maybe quicker than we all want to think. So you go in the draft, maybe they get aggressive and trade up for a quarterback, or they don't get a quarterback right now, and they just stay the process and sign a veteran who wants to play for Pete Carroll. Does this mean, is there a Russell Wilson going to Vegas? I don't think so, but it's a possibility. I think if Aaron Rodgers wanted to play one more year, that looks a lot more appealing for one more year in Vegas if the Jets are done with him. But I'm excited to see what Pete Carroll does here in Vegas. So from the Green Zone podcast, that's all I got for us today. We'll be looking forward to Conference Championship Sunday coming up here. We'll be back next week on Tuesday for our baseball thing that will be going up one way or another on Tuesday. And Thursday we'll be back here for our Green Zone podcast. So from Camo Green, signing off here in the Green Zone podcast. Good luck this weekend, everyone out there rooting for the Bills, Chiefs, Commanders, or Eagles. And we'll see you guys next week.